Hello and welcome to my channel Geography Made Easy. Here we try to make difficult concepts in geography easy. In today's video, we will be looking at the drainage of India. India is blessed with hundreds of large and small rivers which drain the length and breadth of the country. They constitute a major natural resource for not just the living beings of the country, the forests, the agriculture, and other economic activities are also dependent on rivers. Hence, it becomes very important to understand the evolution of the Indian river systems on which life in India has revolved from the ancient times. If we look back in history, we will see that civilizations have developed along the banks of rivers. With no exception, in case of India, we see that the Indus Valley civilization, which was born on the banks of the Indus and the tributaries of the Indus. This civilization, one of the oldest civilizations of the world, used the waters of the Indus, the fertile soils along the Indus, for agricultural processes. Similarly, with time, we see that major cities and towns have developed both in the north and the southern India as well as east and northeast India along major rivers. In order to understand how the evolution of the Indian river systems have taken place, we will be dividing the Indian river systems into two parts. Firstly, we will be looking at the Himalayan river system. The Himalayan river system, which constitutes of mostly three rivers, that is the Indus, Ganga and the Brahmaputra, which drain the entire length and breadth of the Himalayas, and they originate in the trans-Himalayan regions and also in some cases in the Tibetan plateau. So origin of the Himalayan river systems is in the Tibetan plateau area. These rivers have cut gorges in the Himalayan ranges. Some of the very important gorges which we have come across are the gorges of Indus, Satluj, Alaknanda, Gandak, Kosi, Brahmaputra, and so on. This feature, the gorge. What is a gorge? So a gorge is a eye-shaped valley which is seen in the upper course of the river. Here we see that the river is down cutting more than it is doing sideward erosion. So that is why usually these eye-shaped valleys or longitudinal eye-shaped valleys are formed in the upper part of the rivers. The eye-shaped valleys are usually seen of hard, resistant, crystalline rocks. So the gorges which we are talking about in the Himalayan ranges are mostly made up of hard, resistant, crystalline rocks. So this points to the fact that these rivers existed before the Himalayan mountain ranges were formed. That is, the rivers were flowing from north to south. That was the general slope of the land. So from north to south, and when in time we see that the Himalayas later developed. So even after the Himalayas developed, we see that the rivers continued flowing towards the southern direction. So the Himalayas rose, but the rivers created these narrow eye-shaped valleys doing lateral erosion, which were called gorges. This type of drainage system, which exists before a mountain range exists, forming eye-shaped valleys, is called the antecedent drainage system. The existence of the origin of the Himalayan river systems can be explained or has been explained with the help of the Indo-Brahm theory. Now the name Indo-Brahm comes from the name of two rivers. The Indo part is from Indus and Brahmaputra is the Brahm part of the name of the theory. The Indo-Brahm theory talks of the existence of one river, one mighty river which was flowing from the east towards the west direction. That is from Assam to Punjab. This river is called the Indo-Brahm River or the Shivalik River, and this was seen in the Miocene period, which is before the Himalayas were formed. Huge quantities of alluvium were being deposited by the Indo-Brahm River, which some scientists believe that they make up the Shivalik ranges. Later, because of the plate movements and the rise of the Himalayas, this particular river, the Indo-Brahm River, got disintegrated into smaller parts. There was headward erosion. Headward erosion is the process by which a river is doing backward erosion. So if we have a river which is flowing in this way, the river tends to do backward erosion to flatten the surface. This is called the headward erosion. All rivers, especially rivers which are flowing over high velocity regions, over steep regions, are all performing headward erosion very slowly. And in many cases we see, because of the headward erosion, the river capture phenomena also takes place. That is, if there are two tributaries which are flowing along with the distributaries, sometimes we see that the stronger river, the river which has more water, it will annex the river which is at the side. So this river will with time get, the water will join this river. So this valley will be annexed by the river of the valley of this river, and this will create a gap. This kind of process is known as river piracy. So the Indo-Brahm theory talks of river piracy, where scientists argue that Yamuna was the tributary of the Indus, but later it got annexed, or there was river piracy and it was later joined the Ganga. So in this way, disintegration of the main river, Indo-Brahm river, took place. Let us look at the diagram. So this is the diagram. This is the Indo-Brahm river which was flowing in this way, and we see that with time the river gets deposited into smaller segments or sections due to capture of river capture. So we see successive river captures which takes place for the Indo-Brahm river by other rivers, tributary rivers, which were slowly developing. And also because of the plate movements which was taking place, which was leading to the rise of the Himalayas. Now this theory has been criticized by many scientists. It is said that it is not necessary to have one very large stream or river the size of Indo-Brahma flowing all along the length of the Himalayas. In fact, it seems a little bit absurd or weird to simplify that there was only one mighty stream and not many streams existing previously. And the occurrence of the Shivalik deposits is not enough evidence to tell us that the Indo-Brahm River existed, because they could have been brought down by multiple rivers flowing down the Himalayas. Also, depositional history in the Ganga Delta and Assam does not point towards the concept of the Indo-Brahm stream. Also, we see that certain rocks like the Tipam sandstones of Assam do not point towards the Indo-Brahma theory. Rather, they talk more of estuarine like situations existing in Assam. So rather not a river but maybe a shallow sea, which many scientists do believe existed. So that led to the formation of depositions which we see in these areas. But most likely this particular theory is still of importance, because at least there was some mighty river, maybe not as large and as mighty as the Indo-Brahma, flowing along this region, which definitely led to the rise and disintegration of the Himalayan river systems because of the presence of the antecedent drainage systems which we see. We can very much say that certain rivers existed before the Himalayas were there, and they may not have been one single river, but definitely they did exist in much more simplified drainage patterns, because the drainage systems which we see in the present day have a lot of influence of the rise of the Himalayas, the earthquakes and the tectonic movements which take place. So orogenesis and tectonic movements both play an important role in the development of the Himalayan drainage systems. Now let us look at the evolution of the peninsular river systems. The peninsular region, the Gondwana land, obviously existed much before the Himalayas. So the existence of the peninsular river systems are older than the Himalayan river systems. Most of the rivers follow the west to east pattern. They flow from western part to the eastern part, that is the slope of the Deccan Plateau, with exceptions like the Narmada and Tapi. There are block folded river valleys and rocky reaches or rocky channels in these rivers. So where we see that plate movements, or when the collision between the Gondwana land and the Asian plate took place, they might have led to the formation of block faults. And these faulted structures are through which we see that the Narmada and Tapi rivers, they flow through this area. They represent what we can call the consequent drainage system. I will show you some photographs of the rivers which we have been talking about. So this is Ganga, and the Ganga in Varanasi. So Ganga, we can see that it is a very long river. It flows right from Gomukh, and it finally reaches the Bay of Bengal in West Bengal and Bangladesh region. And this, in different parts of the river, we see different kinds of cities, cityscapes, landscapes have developed. So this is Varanasi, with a very vibrant city developing along the banks of the Ganga river. Next we have the Brahmaputra, another Himalayan river, which is very mighty, which is very strong, which is flowing through China, Tibet, then enters India, and then finally it flows through Bangladesh to reach the Bay of Bengal. The Brahmaputra drainage system has different names in different countries, and it is a very mighty river system causing a lot of devastation and floods in the Assam Valley, and then carrying the entire silt of the Himalayas along with Ganga towards the Bay of Bengal, creating huge siltation and then finally delta formation in Bay of Bengal. Next, we have the Indus River, a very old river with a number of major tributaries draining a very large area. And as we have been discussing, ancient civilizations developing along the banks of the Indus River, the Aryans coming into India and settling at the beginning along the Indus rivers and its tributaries. And it is a beautiful river. This is, of course, in the Trans-Himalayan regions where the Indus exists. It starts from the Manasarovar Lake in Tibet. So this is somewhere in the Trans-Himalayan region. Next, we are looking at the peninsular rivers. This is a photograph of the Kaveri River, a peninsular river. This is the Shivasamudram waterfalls. They are flowing over the rocky terrains, and in certain parts where there is a drop in the elevation, we see beautiful waterfalls being formed by these rivers. This is the Godavari River, which is flowing again in the southern part of the plateau area. We can see that most of the places through which it is flowing through faulted, block faulted regions. We can see the mountains on the northern part here, and it is creating its own valleys and draining a large area through which it is flowing. So we will be just briefly discussing about some of the major rivers which are there. So we will start with the Himalayan rivers. We have the Indus and the tributaries of the Indus, the Jhelum, Chenab, Ravi, Bias and Satluj. When we are studying the Indus river systems, we have to keep in mind that it is an important river and we need to know each river and a few of its tributaries, where they are existing, from where they start their journey, and finally where they are ending. Similarly, we follow the same thing for Ganga and for Brahmaputra. The peninsular rivers are divided into the east flowing rivers. We basically focus on Mahanadi, Godavari, Krishna, Cauvery, also Subarnarekha, which is flowing over plateau areas, existing, starting its journey in Jharkhand and finally reaching the Bay of Bengal, and west flowing rivers, which is very important, Narmada, Tapi, Sabarmati and Mahi, flowing through block faulted regions, and they are very important because they form beautiful landscapes. In fact, in many cases they are very attractive for the tourists who go to visit these places. So when we are looking at this from examination point of view, we should know that from which place is Mahanadi river starting its journey or its origin, where it is ending, what is the elevation of the place from where it is starting its journey, and at least two tributaries, two right bank tributaries and two left bank tributaries. This can be best done if the student, they make a table and they learn from there. So all the information is given in your ISC textbook, any standard textbook. From there, you just need to make a simple table where you are writing down this information and just memorizing it. Similarly, we have also southern rivers which are flowing from south to north. We have the Chambal. Because of the badlands, questions have been asked about the Chambal. We have discussed about the Chambal in the previous chapter when we were talking about the badland areas. When we were discussing the different plateaus of the Deccan plateau subsystem. We have seen Betwa, Cane and Son, but Chambal is very important amongst all this. In the examination, a blank map will be provided for map pointing, and this chapter is important from map pointing point of view. So when we get a blank map, how do we mark the rivers on the blank map? So let us look at how it is done. The first river which I will be drawing is the Indus. So Indus is starting here, which is in Tibet. It is flowing along the head of the Jammu and Kashmir, and it is flowing in this way into the Arabian Sea. So the border with Pakistan will be also given in the map. So you should be able to locate the Indus in this way. So this is my Indus river. Then let us draw the other tributaries of the Indus. From here we have the Satluj. The southernmost part, this is the Satluj river, which is this southernmost tributary of the Indus. Then we have Jhelum, which is going into part of Jammu and Kashmir. So this is my Jhelum river. This is my Chenab river. And this is my Ravi. So if we practice this a little bit, it is not at all difficult. Next, let us mark the Yamuna. So if you know the location of Delhi, we know that Delhi, beside Delhi, Yamuna flows. So Delhi is somewhere here. So Yamuna is flowing in this way. So you have this part Nepal, you can locate it that this will be the position of Yamuna. We know Yamuna joins Ganga. So Ganga and Yamuna flow parallelly for some time. So this is Yamuna, this is Ganga. And then Ganga flows through the northern plains, and we know it flows into the Bay of Bengal here. Actually, it gets disintegrated into many parts, but if you are drawing the main trajectory, I think you will get full marks. Then let us draw the Brahmaputra. We know that the Brahmaputra starts in Tibet, then it flows through India, through the Assam Valley, and finally it ends in Bangladesh. Let me extend this part. So this is the portion which is there for the borders which we are sharing. So in the Brahmaputra river, let me draw with a darker color. Starts from here, enters India at this point. So this portion, please, we have to remember. And from here it is flowing parallel through the Assam Valley, and then it flows into Bangladesh. There is one branch of Ganga which is joining the Brahmaputra. So this is my Brahmaputra or Sangpo or Dihang. So if you are given a question that mark Sangpo river or mark Dihang, please know that Brahmaputra is known by different names in different countries and regions. So it is known as Brahmaputra in India and Bangladesh. It is known as Sangpo in China or rather Tibet, and it is known as Dihang in the Arunachal Pradesh Valley. We can be also asked like mark the river of sorrow. So you can mark the Damodar, which is flowing into the Ganga basin. The river which floods a lot, that is the Kosi, starting in Nepal. So some of these rivers also we should know how to mark. And the Chambal, which I have said is important. So Chambal can come and has come in examinations sometimes. We have Luni, which is the sole river flowing through Rajasthan plains. So Gujarat and Rajasthan border, this point from here it is flowing. This is my Luni river. We have Sabarmati and Mahi, both occurring at the southern tip of Gujarat and easy to remember because of from where they are existing. Next, very commonly asked question is mark Narmada, mark Tapi, and in between the Satpura range. So this is the position of the Narmada, this is the position of Tapi, and the Satpura range actually occurs here. Next, let's look at Mahanadi. The four major rivers of the Peninsular Plateau, any one of them can be asked. So we have Orissa, this part. We have the Mahanadi. For Godavari, if you can't mark all the major tributaries, at least the main path should be marked. So at least one should be able to mark Godavari in this way. Then we have Krishna. Krishna is occurring from here. Krishna has major tributaries, Bhima and Tungabhadra. If you can draw them, very good. If you can practice, if not, it's okay. And finally, we have Kaveri, which is flowing in this way. So if these major rivers are practiced, I think we will be done with the map. So these rivers can be, they are not very they are easy to remember, and with practice anybody can do them easily. So regular practice is required for map pointing. Now we have the map with the major rivers marked, so you can refer to this map uh, for your map pointing, and I've shown you how it can be done easily. Next, we will be talking about one question or one part which is asked in the board exams, which is about river regimes. River regime is the flow pattern of a river, and this can be explained with something which is known as discharge hydrographs, and I'll explain what they are. So when we are measuring discharge, discharge is the flow of water in the river. It has a unit which is usually cumex or cusex. Cubic meter per second. That is not very important in this case, but this discharge is measured by certain government agencies who have certain stations placed along the rivers, where the amount of water which is flowing every year in that river is measured. This helps to understand something which we know as the floods, that is, during monsoons, if the discharge is increasing or decreasing, if there is drought or flood, that can be monitored with the help of these stations and the data which is being collected. Now when we have the discharge, we can plot the discharge across the months of for a particular station or a measuring station where this data is being measured. This is called the hydrograph. So hydrographs are basically statistical graphs which are drawn, and where we are plotting two things. On the x-axis we plot the months, so from January to December we plot the different months using a scale. Usually it can be 1 centimeter equal to 1 month or 2 centimeters equal to 1 month. And on the y-axis we plot the discharge. Now for this, for example, we will be getting a data which exists. Like we have, for example, January, and say for a station in Ganga in Gomti, we can have the discharge. So the average discharge of Ganga river in January at Gomti can be say 20 cusecs. Similarly in February it can be 18. March it can be 12. April it can be 30. So in this way this data is available. Now this data will obviously not be given to you, so you don't really have to bother about that. What can be given to you is the discharge hydrograph. So they can give you a discharge hydrograph where they can tell you to identify the river or the drainage pattern which is seen here. So in case of a river, a Himalayan river, we see that the flow of water for the Himalayan river is usually seen, it increases during two periods or two times. One is during the snow melt period or spring, and in another case we see during the monsoons. So a river like Ganga or a river like Yamuna will have its increase in discharge during the months of March and April, when the snow is melting in the Himalayas and the water is increasing. Also we will see again in June, July, when there is heavy rainfall in the entire reach of the river, we will see that the discharge or the amount of water which is there in the river will increase. So in this case the discharge hydrograph for Ganga will be in this way, having two peaks. So this is corresponding to my month of March or April, and this is usually corresponding to the month of July or August. Let me draw August. So when we have a two-peaked diagram or a discharge hydrograph, we know that it is for a river which is flowing in the Himalayan regions and not in the Deccan Plateau region. In case of Deccan Plateau regions, we know that these rivers are originating from the plateau area. The plateau areas are not snow covered. They don't have too much of elevation. So there is no water which will be added into the rivers during the snow melt period or during spring. The only source of water for the peninsular rivers is during the monsoons. So they will have a discharge hydrograph which will look like something this. So when we have rivers which are flowing over the Deccan Plateau, over the peninsular region, we get a river regime or a discharge hydrograph with one peak only. And when we are looking at rivers with two peaks, we can know that they are originating in the Himalayan regions. This question has been asked in ISC, and this is important, and this is not directly given in the book. So you should be able to apply your knowledge and be able to answer these questions if they come. Now, another important question which can be asked is the difference between the Himalayan and the peninsular river systems, because throughout the discussions we have been discussing about the different types of drainage systems which are existing in India. So we can divide and discuss them. This can come as a 5-mark question, so you at least need to remember 5 to 6 points when you are answering this particular question. So the Himalayan, if we look at the first point, it is the length of the rivers. The longest rivers are belonging to the Himalayan river systems compared to the peninsular rivers. The basins, next is the river basins. That is the catchment area or basin. That means the entire area. So if a river is flowing, it flows along a certain area. All the water from this area will have a common outlet or common place through which it is flowing out. This common outlet is known as, this entire area of which we are dealing with, the water of which it is flowing out, is called a basin. It is just like a wash basin which we use in our house, which has a common outlet and it has a slope. So any water which is falling along the sides of that slope will drain into that particular common outlet. So this is called a river basin. So every river has its own basin. So the river basin or catchment area is larger in case of Himalayas. Uh, Comparatively for peninsular plateau, they are smaller. Numbers. Himalayan rivers are larger in numbers. They have many small tributaries and distributaries in case of the Ganga, Brahmaputra rivers also. So numbers in case of the Himalayan rivers are much more than in case of the peninsular plateau. Next is origin. The Himalayan rivers are originating in snow-covered glaciers. So most of the origin for the Himalayan rivers is in the glacial part of the Himalayas. Compared to the peninsular plateau, it is completely rain-fed. In most cases seasonal, and also in some cases we see non-perennial rivers are existing in the Deccan plateau, which is not seen in the Himalayan regions. Valley. We see gorges being formed in the Himalayan regions. We have discussed this previously. And comparatively, the peninsular rivers are flowing through shallow valleys, but in some cases we also see it is flowing through rift valleys, as we have seen in case of Narmada and Tapi rivers. Next is the channel pattern. The Himalayan rivers form lot of river meanders. They are flooding. They are changing their course like Kosi and the other tributaries also. So they are shifting. There is a lot of shift and movement for these rivers. Comparatively, the peninsular rivers are older and more stable, and they are flowing through much stable and straight courses, as they have been existing in this way for a very long period of time. Water usage. The water for the Himalayan rivers are used for irrigation and navigation, and I think in case of the peninsular river systems, of course irrigation and navigation, but the extent of usage is not as much as the Himalayas. The eighth point is stage. In case of Himalayan rivers, they are at a youthful stage. They are much more younger in nature. They have been formed later compared to the Deccan Plateau, where the rivers are much more mature. They are older. They are flowing over literally basins which have in most cases become flat and featureless. In case of the Himalayas, they are flowing over areas which is experiencing earthquakes. It is still experiencing uplift because of the movement of the plates. So that is the reason why they are younger. Type of drainage, we have already discussed this. In case of the Himalayas, it is antecedent, and in case of the peninsular plateau, it is the consequent drainage. Antecedent drainage is drainage systems which have existed before the landform was created, so they continued over the natural flows, irrespective of the fact that the landforms have changed. Consequent drainages are drainage which is much more suitable to the geology or the rock structure. That is how the particular landscape is. The rivers have aligned themselves accordingly. So peninsular plateaus are older and they have aligned themselves more in that way compared to Himalayan rivers. Finally, the last point is the delta. We see that Himalayan rivers have larger deltas, especially the Ganga Brahmaputra delta, which is one of the largest in the world. We also see deltas in case of rivers which are flowing into the Bay of Bengal, the peninsular rivers like Krishna, Cauvery, but they are smaller because they are draining over lesser area and they are carrying less silt, so the deposition is much less, so the formation of the delta is smaller. Narmada and Tapi is flowing into the Arabian Sea. They do not form deltas. They are forming over hard rocks. The sediment which is getting deposited is getting washed away. There is not much sediment which gets formed. So we don't see delta formation. Rather we see estuaries getting formed on the Narmada and Tapi where it is flowing into the Arabian Sea. So this is a question which can be asked in the exam. So lastly, I'll just summarize the chapter briefly with the important questions for the examination point of view. The first is the differences that is existing, which we just discussed, between east and west flowing rivers of Deccan Plateau and Himalayan and Peninsular rivers. Details of important individual river systems like Ganga, Brahmaputra, Indus, Mahanadi, Godavari, Krishna, Cauvery. And also I think Chambal, these rivers are also important. Flow regimes should be studied and we should understand the concepts so that we can write what is expected, and map pointing from this chapter is very very important. So if you have any doubts and questions, please feel free to leave a comment. I will get back to you with your answers. And if you find this video useful and if you like this video, please like the video, share and subscribe to my channel. So till we shall meet in the next video. So thank you.